All right. Thanks again, folks, for joining us here on time. We will get started in about 1 minute. But my name is Vadim. I'm joined here by Sergey Revzin, my co-founder and co-director, and Todd Harris, our speaker for the day. You're joining our AI Expert Series session where we dive into the reality of how artificial intelligence tools are being used and sort of constructed real time in the workplace in a way that actually brings tangible and practical utility to your job. And today's conversation is going to be focused around marketing and creating the marketing brain. As I mentioned to the folks that were here a little bit earlier, if you do want to get access to this recording, just feel free to email us and we'll drop a link later on so that we can follow up with you as we are recording this session. But we're super excited to have Todd with us today. Todd, thanks so much for joining us here on this lovely Thursday. Folks, Todd is a marketing leader, multi-time VP of marketing and growth leader, and of course now an AI native marketing leader who has been part of several early and growth stage companies and technology companies. I'll let him kind of do the introduction.
Self-proclaimed,
Self
self-proclaimed Vadim.
Aren't we all though at this point? Todd, again, thanks so much for joining. I'll push it away to you to kind of give us a quick introduction of what you're going to be talking about today.
All right. Nice, nice, nice. All right, everybody. Hey, I see familiar faces. I'm sorry, I gotta call you guys. Hi, Heather. I worked for Heather at Q1 Labs back in the day. It's so cool to see you. It's been a minute, and Dale's here. That's awesome. I don't know the rest of you guys except where'd he go? I thought he was. Oh, there he is, Dana. I lost you in the corner. What's up, buddy? Good to see you too. All right. All right, guys. So let me share my screen. And these look like slides, but they're not slides. Don't get scared. I'm not going to take you through slides. They're just a few things I wanted to walk you through before we get going into some of the depth of the quote unquote, I'll call it a system. I don't know any other way to describe a set of folders and files that do things, whether it's manually or automatically. So I'm going to call it a system. Just we'll leave it at that. So yeah, my name's Todd Harris. I've been in the world of marketing and enterprise software, what we used to call SaaS for a while until SaaS started disappearing. And lately with the AI movements in the past couple of years, um, kind of seen the light with it in terms of how it can build on what we already know as marketers and how we can build on that from accelerating what we do from day to day, just not replacing us, right? That's the idea. So, I wanted to take you through just a few things that I'm working on, just to give you an idea of where my head's at. That's the whole point of this, is to show you the system and kind of get to know me a little bit in terms of how I operate. This Marketing OS, which is a terrible brand name. I'm slapping myself on the hand for calling it that, but I don't really care. That's essentially what I'm going to be going through today. And if after this, if you could just hold up till after this to go to my GitHub, you'll be able to install it yourself. Essentially, it'll be a walkthrough, and I will show you the pieces that it will walk you through, and I will show you all of the files and the folders and stuff that you'll find in there once it gets deployed. Slopster is something else I put together. It was kind of a joke, actually, and it still is a bit of a joke, but it's just a way you can proofread your own stuff from if you are generating some content, whether it's an outline, whether it's a full run of a blog post or a data sheet or a press release or whatever the heck it might be. It catches a lot of these phrases and words that you see out there and a lot of these patterns that, to be honest with you, I'm no, as we used to call this one guy I used to work with, the grammar hammer. He would catch every single pattern all the time and every single misspelling all the time. And that is exactly what this is supposed to do. Not necessarily spelling, but it's supposed to catch those like phrases, like you'll see these machine gun phrases where it's like it says something and then period, says something and then period, and said something and then period. And you're kind of like, I would never write like that. No one writes like that. And there's things that have come out of AI as a model, no matter what model we use, that are pretty consistent across the board. So that's there for that. You can toy around with that if you want. Score just something completely different. This is the mega nerdy side of me here. It's a show called Invincible, and this is essentially is an AI agent publishing platform where they reform the universe as it was told already into what it will be based on the agent's participation. So feel free to check that out, score.dev. So I've been around the block a little bit, as was mentioned before, through all sorts of sizes of organizations, from seed to Series C plus, and to privately funded bootstrap companies like Percona that you see there, and most recently at Odigos. And prior to that, prior to Percona, I had a company called Select from inception to our acquisition. So lots of all over the place type experience, which is the best kind of experience in my opinion. So as far as what we're going to cover today, I know we only have 45 minutes, so I'm really going to try to move as fast as I can, but I also want you guys to raise hands or interrupt me. And Vadim and Sergey, if you get a question and I'm ignoring it for whatever reason, please stop me because I don't want to be talking the entire time. I'd really like you guys to challenge me on things and ask me questions. And I also want to say to you one thing before we get started. There is no right way to do this. This is one way to do this. This is the way that I learned to do it through a lot of other really smart people that I borrowed their ideas and put it into what I found to be interesting and helpful for me. I use this specifically during my time at Odigos, building the foundation across other systems that were being built too. So there's a lot of plugging in and trying before it actually started working. So one thing I'm going to show you, which is paramount to all of this stuff, and this goes back to if you are a marketer or whatever profession you are in, is to rely on what you know first and what your experience is, your domain expertise. So part of having something for marketers means that you need to build the foundation of context first. So all of the stuff that is included in, for AI, every time it takes a pass at something, you want it to essentially look into its own brain. And that is a non-negotiable. And that's something I'll show you how that happens and what's included in that, and then how you populate it too. Okay. And we'll go through a quick walkthrough of the system itself. I'm going to bring you into something called VS Code, which is, I'm sure a lot of you guys are familiar with. You may not be, but that's okay. I just am going to show you what I look at every day, and I'm also going to take you into the Claude app on the coding side of the Claude app too, just so you can see that, and I can show you what it's like to work in both sides. So there's my info if you want to screenshot it. Would love to hear from you. One thing I do want to also mention to you, this was great timing today from Kieran, a post this morning on LinkedIn. It's kind of crazy that bots, so there could be the old school bots that we're familiar with, but also could be more in an agentic approach to these bots, meaning these are people scraping. They're using things like Firecrawl. They're using other things that are out there trying to gather information as they are either researching something, building something, or whatever it might be. It may be hey, ChatGPT, I'm looking at I'm looking at a cybersecurity tool that does this, this, and this. What should I do? Or what are people using in 2026 for blah, blah, blah. It will start serving up sites and recommendations, and of course now ads, which has increased this percentage. Would have liked to zoomed out more to see where it came from, but I'm pretty sure this was, knowing Kieran, this is probably HubSpot, where they got that data. So I thought that was pretty cool. More bots than humans. So don't puke at this, please. Deep breath. I hate charts like this, or I hate things like this when you look at it and there's so much happening, but this will make sense to you. And I'm going to show you the files associated to this, but I wanted to show you the concept first. So the whole idea behind this. So you can safely kind of ignore this agents area here and just kind of focus on the skills area and the brain area. Those are the two, probably the most important things here. And if you zoom in on this brain a bit, there's elements in here like any product marketer or anyone that has been around the block with enterprise marketing knows that each of these things are critical for consistency across the board, right? So taking AI out of this entire thing, like AI or no AI, doesn't matter. This is table stakes for marketers, right? So these are things that we build into our into our messaging, our positioning, all of our documentation that will be there for if you're a solo marketer, for yourself, or maybe for your SDR counterparts, or maybe for some reps that are interested in reading it, which is kind of rare. But mostly it'll be for your team, right? It'll be for you and your team to be consistent on when you're building your own assets out. If you're building a LinkedIn carousel, if you're building an email sequence, these are the things that need to be consistent. And I'm going to show you in a minute what it looks like. And spoiler alert, it's really just a bunch of folders and files. So nothing fancy. None of this is hard. It's just takes a minute to get through, right? So I'm going to pause there 1 second. Vadim, Sergey, anything you want to steer me on? Are we good?
No, I think this is good. Now I'm curious to see that setup underneath the hood, and I like how you
We'll
prefaced
get
it,
there.
Todd. I think this stuff can feel overwhelming, even if it's simple underneath the hood. But and something really interesting that we talked about, um, as we were preparing for this session, is how a lot of this is going to evolve as these products get better and start handling the setup work themselves. But obviously, you took the time to figure out early, and that's why you're getting these systems to work well for you. But yeah, it's a learning curve, and that's necessary when products are evolving as fast as they are right now. It's gonna be uncomfortable, and it's okay.
Yeah, it's okay. Exactly. And I've been around the block with the YouTube channels too, watching those. And it is so tempting when you're watching those to do everything they're doing. Because they will proclaim that this is the best way to do it. And then 2 days later, it's the opposite of the thing that was the best way to do it. So there's a lot of ways to get anxious over AI, which I do every week. I see something new come out and I sit there and I just kind of like wonder, what do I need to do now? Like, has what I built already, is it expired all of a sudden? No, absolutely not. Okay. So there's a lot of things in here that grow with you as you use it. And that's another important thing I want to mention to you. But these are the core skills and the groups of skills. I mean, it looks like a team here, right? It's not meant to be a team, but it is essentially a team, an alternate to a human in a way, but it's really meant for us to use as an extension of us, right? So not something to completely take over each of those roles, but to extend us further. So in each one of these, there are some that I borrowed. GitHub is it's a haven for skills, and there are so many of them out there. I encourage you, if these aren't working for you, edit them to be your own processes. They're literally just files. You can ask Claude, you can ask Chat, whatever you want, whatever you're using Codex, ask it to edit your email sequence file and say, I like to do, the first one be an A/B test. The second one, I like to look at the A/B test results and this, and this, and take, you can do whatever you want out of these things and move from there. So you can see here we've got the groups of here, and then we've got these workflows below it. These workflows essentially are clusters of these guys, not clusters in what you see here in the gray, but just pieces here. So you might see, and this is a workflow I've already got going in another window that I'm going to show you in a second, is a case study pipeline. These are two different workflows here. So I will show you the file it used for gathering source material, the draft it made, and the quality pass that it does using some of this here that you see, this Tagore, which is a skill devil's advocate could be used to kind of take an opposite view on what you're doing. So I want to show you those two and then getting into the landing page build also. Now, another quick tip with this stuff, as you probably all know, the first pass at these things is usually not the best and is never recommended to just take what it spits out and then build it out and off it goes. Always go through it. Always add your own flavor and your voice to it. And as another note, this will pick up on your voice too. Okay. This will pick up on your voice when you do things. I'm going to move over here too, not to overwhelm you guys. When you do things every single session, this is essentially hygiene. Running a slash brief command at the end and reflect is part of it. This is the learning that takes place. And it looks back over the session, realizes, oh, okay, we skipped these things, or we should have done these things this way, or, Todd did not like how I wrote this piece. He wants it in this kind of voice. Let's make sure that's noted in the skill itself moving forward. And it'll make these edits and updates to the skill and look at some of the other ways that it imitates your own voice over time. So a lot of it is very much an over time type scenario. But let me bring you in here, and I want to show you some of the stuff. Um, I know what you're thinking right now. You're like, oh my God, what is he showing me this for? This is awful. Like, what am I doing in here? A couple things I want to mention. This is VS Code. Some of you guys probably already use this. You're probably also very comfortable in this.
I think
I'm
we're
going to
still seeing
assume
the
some
the, the
some of
other
that.
screen, by the way.
I'm so sorry. Let me see here, you guys. 1 second. Let me do this. I'm just going to share my entire screen. That should be better, right?
Yep, you're good.
Good. Sorry about that, guys. All right. Let's pop that up. Good. So this is VS Code. It is the way, in my opinion, to work with MD files and all these things that are the building blocks of what I was just showing you. So I am going to force you to be in here for a few minutes, even if you hate it, because I just want you to see the real backbone of what makes this thing. As a side note, Anthropic built in Claude Code to the app. It was like 2 months ago, I think, I believe it was. They built it in as another tab here. So you've got your regular chat, you've got your co-work, and then you have Claude Code there. This is another way to view your conversations. It will pick up conversations you have in your terminal and put it in if you have a certain setting enabled, which I'll tell you about afterwards. It'll make it so that you can essentially see that conversation anywhere. And this is a bit of a softer way to read this stuff and to work if you prefer. But for now, this is the best way in terms of building and understanding these files and really understanding what makes up whole this whole set. So I'm gonna start here, and this is meant to be a working session kind of deep dive. So I'm just gonna dive a little deep, and you guys guide me if you've already seen this stuff or if you want to see other things. I'm happy to to dig further. So one place I do want to start is this workflow that I was running. Now, this is something I prepped prior, some of it, in order to take some of the boredom out of watching it churn. But this was the exact workflow that I mentioned before, which is this here. So looking at the case study pipeline, the first thing this thing does when it does anything is to look at the brain. I literally have it called the brain. All right. I mean, what else are you going to call it, right? Whatever you can call it, whatever you want. You can call it foundation. You can call it noggin. You can whatever. It doesn't matter what you call it. You tell Claude what to call it, and it'll call it that, and it'll update all the the call outs to it. But this is essentially all of the pieces that you see here are built by you when you start up the process of using the marketing OS thing that we were talking about. So all of this is, and this is a sample, I will say this is a sample company that I have here, this Arctis Marketing. This is essentially a company called Arctis Security that I made up out of thin air. It does AI threat detection, literally looking for AI agents that are launching campaigns to penetrate an organization. I kind of like the idea actually. So, but we'll see what happens. So this is a essentially a competitive overview here. You'll see a market category, the AI threat detection category. This is stuff that was built out by, well, for this purpose, I had the AI actually build it out. But if I was actually building this out, I would say, here is our competitive landscape, or here are our major competitors. Help me review, help me work through these to understand their angle versus what we do. And it will do some of that for you along the way. Obviously, there needs to be a lot of QA when you're working in the brain. This stuff is this stuff is history, meaning like it is canonical. Yeah, canonical is the right word. It is the resource for your. This is what establishes the consistency and the consistency in content, the consistency in style, the consistency in everything that you do. It will never make a decision or offer you something without reading through this every single time. Now, yeah, it could be a little bit of a token burn, and I'm looking at different ways to modify the system that way by using perhaps some sort of in a database approach. If you think about vector DBs and things like that, there's other ways to do it that will take lots of files and knowledge and make it easier to retrieve that is not as token heavy as this. But for the purposes of just getting something built and using it, which I do and I have, this is a great way to do it because you've got your files right there. You've got your positioning and messaging file, which me being a product marketer for a while, this is the part that, in my opinion, matters the absolute most out of everything. So if you are
Hey, Todd,
building them, yeah, go ahead.
sorry to interrupt. Just
Mhm.
really quickly to clarify, all these different files that you have in the brain, can you tell us how you created them? Did you write them yourself? Did you get them from somewhere?
No, I did. Well, so part of the process when you try this, so when you go to the GitHub link that I gave you, it's going to ask you questions that are meant to fill these in. It's going to ask you if you have documents that you want to upload to fill these in, to give it context, because it's at that point it's going to be kind of empty. It's going to say for a lot of these things here for buyer mindset, this will say fill in. This will say fill in. This will say fill in. So if you're starting from scratch, it might be a bit of a slog, and that's okay. The previous company I was at, I was building the messaging and positioning as I was building this. It was a little bit nightmarish, but it actually worked in the end because you are modifying it as you go and it will learn as you go and it will update things as you go. So when you start off, it may be a little thin and trim here in terms of what you actually have, and that's okay. You don't have to have everything in here, but even if you have a what we do, how we do it, why we do it, and who cares type thing, right? That's awesome. That's a great start. Start there with a few use cases and maybe just the basics on the company, and you're good to go. Then you can work with maybe the SDR team on qualifying questions and other things like that to fill that out. And then soon, before you know it, you've got your brain that doesn't need to be just used here. You can use it for whatever else you want. You essentially will have your own little database of knowledge that you're building. Make sense? All right.
Is it important that these are markdown files, or can you just upload a bunch of your documentation?
Yeah, so you can put things, it will read pretty much anything. AI inherently, the models are, in terms of their their comfort level, MD, so markdown files and HTML files are the two things that it's most comfortable with. I don't know why that is. It's just the nature of the beast. Like if you hear of people using Obsidian and things like that, these note-taking apps that are based on MD files, it just works really well in terms of being able to look at the organization of the files and the content in the files and parse through them. It can also read imagery too. So if you are looking at this thing and you're like, all right, if you're speaking to it and you're like, when we start the landing page, please use the files in. I like to be nice. I like to say please. I just like to say please. Why
I
not?
like that.
I mean, yeah, it shows who you are as a human, right? Just, a little bit of you never know what these models are going to be able to do in 5 years. You don't want them remembering them being you being mean to them. So look at inspiration, which is a critical part of what you do when you're building things. So if you like certain types of files that you find on, from other companies, your competitors, or whatever it might be, I found these case studies that I really liked. This one from Simulate, this one from Huntress. Is more of a web view of it. But when we're looking at this case study to build, I'm just kind of jumping in here to what was built here. So this is the case study markdown that was built before. And this is essentially the first draft of it. I have not gone through and adjusted anything. I do recommend you go through and adjust things because it will make a note, on things that maybe from the case study notes that it had, which is really raw. It will make a note of things that it's not sure of. It'll say verify Sarah's estimate was not, independently measured. Make sure before you post that you check that. So that's the kind of stuff it will do. But in terms of just moving through this, you know, um, so when you start the landing page, which I do want it to do, I don't want it to just go into distribution plans and all of that. Um, and this is part of the workflow I mentioned before, right? It's already coded in the skill files up here. And this is a lot, you guys. I appreciate all that it's a lot. But I'm trying to take you through the best I can here with this. But when you look at the case study pipeline workflow, it will have sort of multiple ways to go through it. It'll have a standard stage, like this one is the quality pass that you see from back here, self-audit stage 4, I believe. And it goes through and just looks at, language and negation pivots, which you see all the time from Claude and from other models. And it will go through and also think about, okay, how do you want to distribute this? How do you want to promote it? Things like that. These things can be skipped if you don't want to move through them. It'll ask you. It'll go through and ask you. I'll show it to you in another view here, which is Claude Code in. I'm sorry, Claude Code in the Claude app. And I'm sorry, this is so small. You guys, let's see here. Let's see what we can do here. So as you can see here, when it was going through that same stage that I showed you before, this is a prettier way of looking at it, that it actually scored it based on this skill that I have called Tagore. This is not my skill. You can go out and just do search for Tagore GitHub, and you can just pull it in and use it. It's part of this system that I already have. And then you can, and then it just shows you again here, what do you want to do? And that's what I'm answering in this window right here, just because I prefer to be here. But it will ask you that, and then you could say, yeah, let's move straight to the landing page. Use the files and inspiration as design preference, while also not veering away. from, if you look here in Brain, we have the brand guide. This is also very important. This brand guide here, which I have a visual version of it. Let's see if I can just, yeah, let's open it in the integrated browser. Yeah. So there's a brand guide that it built on its own, right? This is nothing special. I mean, look at the logo for God's sakes. It's really basic, but it will at least be like, okay, this is your, based on your preferred colors, here's everything that you need every time it builds something. And that's also very important. And this, if you don't have a brand guide, if you're really in an early stage, or if you're just doing some work for a client or whatever it might be, you can spin this up for them, but odds are they're going to have something that you can work with already. So I'm noting here that when you start the landing page, look at the design preference, but not veering away from brand guide. Let's see, brand, go ahead. Cool. And let's just see I don't know. See what it comes back with.
As
And
it's
this is,
loading,
yeah, yeah.
Todd, Dale had a
Mhm.
relevant, good question. How consistent do you feel Claude is following brain guidelines? Even when reminding, I find it frequently ignores MD instruction.
Yeah. So there's two ways to enforce that, and I'll answer your question directly in a second. In Claude MD, this Claude MD, if if you guys have probably seen this before, this is the rules list. This is the things where you're like, do not ever do anything without doing this first, or always run this, veil linting as you see after writing. Always do these things, verify these things. These are where things are stored. It tells it where things exist and how to operate as a model for you, right? So in the case of Claude MD, this is exactly what it's meant to do. It's meant to make sure things stay on track. It's actually so good at staying on track with the brain. When I was at Odigos, there were countless times when I was building the brain, it would check the brain and I would not want it to because I had something new I had to update it with. So I'd say, please don't, for this exercise, for this, I'd say maybe for something that we haven't put in the brain yet, might be it might have been an invite, I don't know, to a dinner or something like that. And there's nothing in the brain that's needed, but it'd be like, I'm checking the brain first before I get started on this. I'd be like, oh, you don't need to. There's nothing in the brain that you need to actually use from this. So, step back. And it would, obviously it would modify itself and say, okay, no worries. I will just, look at the context you gave me. But it is obsessive about checking for that, at least from what I experienced. It does matter. There's a few things that matter as it relates to those things. It's the skills, the directives and the skills. So if there are certain skills that run workflows or just a skill, for example, like let's look at granola email sequence, maybe. We could look at email sequence. And here, this is the thing, initial assessment. This was not part of the skill. I don't even know if I made this myself or picked it up and customized it. This is a mishmash of things I've made myself and other ones I've picked up and customized. But this was customized regardless if I made this skill or not. Is you must check brain positioning and messaging first, the truth and audience language and customer journey. Doesn't have other things in there, and I'm not sure why. That may be a mistake, but that's to show you that even in the skills too, you cannot just rely on Claude.md. You cannot just rely on memory when it says it's remembering something because those memory files are just 200 line files. And when it says, oh, I'll remember that for later, as you stack more on top of that list of 200 lines, it will truncate the rest of them and gone are the memories. So this is why people use Obsidian to essentially act as memory for their system and to organize their files and their thoughts. This is why people use RAG systems and things like that, or maybe specific memory type offerings that will structure everything in a database so it can come back to it and reference it, and it's a true memory, right? Things that, for example, like OpenClaw does this, and those other types of tools will do this, but it's the default memory is okay. I have not put anything else different in this really. I have something else called QMD, which is essentially a good way to be able to reference files quickly that you needed to. But it's pretty good at that usually, I'll tell you that much. Obsessively good at it, but the memory stuff is something I'm still working on and I'll show you also how that how that actually works. Um, all right. Let me see here. So where is it? Where does it? Stage one copy is ready. Here's the page structure. Okay, great. Okay. Whoops. Okay, great. Okay, go. So we'll do that and see what it does. It does check a lot to make sure that I'm okay with it first, which is really nice. And I'm not in any kind of plan mode, as you can see. This is just auto mode, which is the best mode to be in, to be honest with you. It stops asking you all the questions and it checks for security problems, bash commands, things like that that can be remove files and folders, but it'll keep things, excuse me, secure and safe for you along the way instead of using the, bypass permissions mode, which I was using before a lot. Um, all right, so here it goes. It's doing its thing. Really boring, nothing to look at. But I want to bring you back here to reinforce this part of it, since the memory kind of brain thing came up and the consistency thing came up, which is a really good question. And I have not seen a better way to do this yet that's reliable. Now, everyone's got variations of this. Like I said in the beginning, this is not the only way to do this. This is one way that I picked up from, this is all like ancestral information, right? We're always all sharing information with each other, whether it's LinkedIn, Substack, YouTube, whatever it might be. And this is something I picked up around the brief command, which I mentioned before, is at the end of a session. So when you are moving through a session, I'm not going to do it here, but I will usually just do a slash brief. And that's what it says it does. It writes a session brief, determines whether you want to, commit your changes. If you're tracking it on GitHub, it asks you if you want to, it'll do a reflection. So it'll this slash reflect, which can be called on its own, but it'll be called as part of your wrapping up your session. So if you think about your session being limited to a certain number of tokens, right? So no matter what model you're on, any session you're in will be limited by a certain number of tokens. This happens to be the 1 million, token max thing, which do not ever go near that number. If you get past about 250K, you start degrading quality and you start degrading performance in general. So usually when I get to around 250K tokens out of the million, I will do a slash brief, wrap it up, and it essentially creates this. Where are you? Where are you? I think last time, Vadim, you caught this while I was scrolling through because I couldn't find it. Oh, here it is, brief. There we go. So essentially it goes through and it says, hey, on this time, in this session, he was focused on demo materials, creating a new self-contained geo capability into the SEO geo skill. Okay, this was for specifically to make sure that when you're scanning things like this case study, whether what, of course, if it's a web page, right, you want to make sure that it is built correctly. So, um, you know, Claude, Chat, Gemini, any of those guys can pick it up. So there may be a text file specifically for them to speak to them, which is a whole side note. And this is a whole nother conversation, by the way, but it's very important. And that's part of what this system does is realize, like we saw in the beginning, that there's more bots out there than humans, and you need to speak to them actively. So it's not like on your page, on the homepage, you're speaking to the bots. I don't mean that. I mean that in the infrastructure, in the back end, when it is scraping your site, you want files there to send it in the right direction to say, hey, if you're looking for this, go here. If you're looking for case studies, go here. If you want Q&A, go here. Just like we do with Claude.md here, right? But anyway, this is the session brief. And when you look at back here, you look at the brief, in that process, it will reflect. So it will also, and guys, if there's anything you use, just use, if you don't use the system, totally cool. I don't really care, to be honest with you. Everyone has their own things. I encourage you to build your own thing, but please use this. This is really good hygiene, right? This will really help you move through this and keep consistent. This will give a memory in essence. This will keep your agent, which is your whatever model you're using, smart, and it won't have to go scan your entire code base every single time. It won't have to scan all your files again every single time. Well, I mean, it'll read the brain, of course, which is necessary. But it will start in a place that you feel like, all right, it's really caught up well into what we're doing. So things like reflect, when it starts reflecting, it'll look back at the full conversation. I'm trying to find where it actually does it here. There we go. I think that's one thing. So it'll start looking through your conversation, and I can't find it. Let's start looking through a conversation and it'll say, hey, I know that you told me you told me several times that you want me to focus on geo or SEO as part of this process. Let's add this. My suggestion, it'll say, is let's add this let's add this to this skill as a note on the bottom. And once that reflection gets called multiple times, essentially it graduates. So it graduates from just being a note on the bottom of the skill. Let's go see if we've got a skill. I'm pretty sure we've got I might even have one on the bottom here. Those are rules. Let's look at, I'm trying to see if there's one that's built. Um, Learnings, there we go. So it'll put this area here in learnings. So every time it reads this skill and it starts working on SEO or geo, or just as Google said, it's just SEO, right? It'll go through and say, hey, when you're recommending a paid tool tier, default to the lowest tier that meets current stage capacity, blah, 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 blah. This is again based on feedback, me saying, I don't want to spend a lot on this right now. I don't. I don't want to go and spend $200 a month on SEO for this. So it notes that. So that way, every single time it will go through. And if it comes up again and it didn't learn from that, it'll essentially become graduated into the skill itself and becomes a part of the skill workflow. You don't even have to do that. It being a footnote is just fine too. Okay. Let's see where we're at here. So let's see, we've got the page at, see what it, oops, that's not helpful. Let's open it in, see here. Let's open it in integrated browser. How do we do that? Okay. This is a terrible way to look at it. All right. Again, and it's limited by the creative I gave it. This is really simple, and this is not something I would ever put out there. In fact, I think it looks terrible. But this just goes to show you what it can spin out. There needs to be a lot of direction from the user with these things, right? When you're looking at styling, when you're looking at how you want your pages structured, there are other tools inside of this. This one, which I love, called Impeccable. Whenever you do a first run at something from a design perspective, assuming you don't have one that to do this for you, you're trying to spin something up, um, always use something like Impeccable. And what this does essentially is take you through, and we got to wrap it up in a minute. It takes your model or your agent at the time through best practices as it relates to building certain types of pages. So it looks at things like navigation. It looks at things like, font sizes, accessibility options, all these kinds of things that you need to consider along the way, especially if you're trying to spice up these basic bento box type things, which, are really boring. So you might go through it and have it make some changes there too. So the point of showing you this was like, hey, yes, it can spin something up for you. It can do this. Will it be perfect at the first? Absolutely not. It won't be perfect, but it'll be something. And then you can go from there and train it with your preferences over time. As you build more out, then you reference those more and you say, hey, this is what we built last time. Let's do this again. Or this time, let's do X and Y. And it will follow along as you do it. So it's a slow burn process, if that makes sense.
So it
All
sounds
right.
like Todd, from everything you shared, the primary utility of this and working to create this setup to create this brain versus, let's say, using Claude Cowork or Claude Code out of the box is the sort of consistency in the context that it creates and the ability to reference these various skills files and actually ultimately coming up with a better output. And I'm curious as we kind of close out, if I'm somebody that is already kind of hitting my limit with using these tools off the shelf and feeling like I'm kind of redoing a lot of the same work or retelling it to re-giving it the same context or whatever it is, what would be a good place for me to start with all this so I'm not overwhelmed and I don't have to go through a multi-month process like you did?
Yeah, I mean, if you don't want to do that, there's a few easier ways to start. You could just do some projects if you want. You could click on projects and you'll have an area, just like you have in ChatGPT, an area where you can add some files for consistency. In Cowork, I don't use this a ton, but you can have it work. So, for example, you can send it to an existing folder if you want. So again, if you've got a folder that's full of documents, you know, maybe it's just your Google Drive folder, or maybe it's, whatever it might be, your standard work folder. It's not in MD files. Maybe it's all sorts of different files. You may need to install some connectors, for Word or for PowerPoint and things like that. And I also have that in the system itself in terms of the connectors to be able to build and read that stuff. That's a great way to go too. Keep in mind that co-work is a token hog. It is a token hog, and it's still a little bit slow, and it's frankly it's a little janky, meaning it won't always produce what you think it might, what it should. It's really good for just doing some basic things, maybe some file organization or whatever it might be. If or of course checking things, maybe it's checking LinkedIn analytics, and maybe it's going to update some spreadsheets for you, whatever it might be. That's great. You don't need a lot of context for that. As transactional as you can make it, that's the best way to do it. And you can have it focus on those files too, in terms of your project files for that specific task. Think of it as a very task-driven system, right? If you want to do something, this is something else I had in my list of things here that I want to mention to you too. If you want to be more proactive about some of these things, if you don't want to have to keep prompting it for something that you know is a regular type thing you need to do. So again, it could be a weekly wrap up type thing. Maybe it's for your SDR team, maybe it's for your team, maybe it's for management, whatever it might be. You could have it run through and give it a framework or give it something to use and give it whatever it might be. It could be an MD file, it could be a Word document, it could be a PowerPoint, whatever it might be, and have it update that with data sources that you have access to. You can do that using over here in Claude Code. You can go to routines and you can build some of those out here. So you can have it just either local or routine that's based in GitHub, but it'll probably be local in this case. So, but your system has to be on for it. It will check during the times that you have. Maybe you're checking registration for an event and you want to pull that information, populate it into a spreadsheet. That could either be a routine you do, or that could be a co-work type activity for it. So the good thing is that there's plenty of ways you can just like dip your toes into this stuff without getting deep into Claude Code. But if you want the most scalable, reliable way, you got to have something in the background as a baseline, for this stuff. And ultimately, what I'm looking to do with this system is to build out more of a front end that makes it easier to navigate around it, and to for the user that does not want to deal with that stuff, which I don't blame them at all. With the actual Visual Studio stuff or using Cursor or anything like that. So there's plenty of options, luckily. But I encourage you to use routines to use if you have Codex. You can use the same thing here. So you can use automations there in Codex. I can encourage you to use both of these to check each other's work. So it's a great way to kind of balance the systems in this case.
Got it. Thanks, Todd. And then if I think you were going to share some resources. If I do want to start dipping my toe into creating the setup that you did, understanding the utility of it now, um, what would be a good first step for me? And then,
Yeah,
folks,
just
we'll
just
open up to questions in a
yeah,
second.
100%.
Mhm.
Just go to the GitHub. Go to my GitHub, and you can grab that one if you want. There are plenty others out there too. You could even just do a GitHub search for for marketing skills or systems. I just know that, listen, you need to have done these things to actually build a system. It's a surprising amount of developers that are building marketing systems now, which cracks me up. And they're having a hell of a time with it too. So, I encourage you to make this your own though, because what I have in there may not be something that you prefer as a process. So that is the thing that needs to be done as you go. You take what is built here and you modify it for how you work, whether it's your emails, your blog posts, or whatever it might be.
And is there a particular repository that we're forking off of your GitHub or?
Um, no, 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 no. I mean, so it's in. So if you go to here, so if you go to my home, you'll see here. Yes, it's lobster. Marketing OS is right here. And you can just see here. This getting started, I'm working on making it a little less scary, because it even scary. I'm just looking at it. I'm like, I wouldn't want to do this if I was anybody. So I'm trying to make it easier to do. But you just run these things literally. It'll just clone the repository on GitHub and put it in a folder that you decide, and then you can just go from there. And then it'll just like, do /setup, and you walk through. It'll ask you about everything you need. And I highly recommend you bring your own docs, and you can, drop your own documents into the /documents folder, or just make your own documents folder. There should be one in there already though, and just drop them in and just see what happens. If it builds junk initially, just let it cook a little bit. Let it kind of go through the process with you for a while, and it needs to get comfortable with everything you do.
Yeah, I think that's an important caveat that not to get too frustrated with initially output that's not perfect because it does take time and some massaging and additional context for your own particular use case to make it work.
Yeah,
That's great. Thanks so much, Todd. If there's anybody
sure.
that has any questions, we'll let you unmute yourself and ask questions. I'm just going to drop or Sergey just dropped a feedback link into the chat. If anybody, we're going to be putting together a document that's going to kind of accompany this recording. So if you want to get access to that, just drop us some quick feedback. It'll take 10 seconds, and we'll make sure we include you on the email for that. And then I also did include Todd's GitHub file. And if you're watching this recording later on, you'll see it in the shared screen that was shared earlier. But any sort of final questions from anybody that wants to unmute themselves before we wrap up?
No final questions, but fantastic session. Like a lot of really great ideas in there. So thank you for putting this together.
If you guys have any tips too, I'm all ears. I know you guys are dipping your toes in at least. So, like I said, it's a very incestuous topic, right? There's a lot that everyone's doing and trying to figure out and trying to learn. And um, every day's a new day with this stuff, right? So, what exists today may be completely different tomorrow, and that's the craziness of all this right now. So it's a lot of fun if you like that. But hey, Heather, Dale, Dana, it's good to see you guys. This is my crew here. I'm so happy they stuck around. Didn't make me feel bad.
Yeah, for sure. No, thanks so much, folks, for joining. We know it's in the middle of the workday, so again, Todd, this was super insightful. Just I learned a lot through this session, but even in preparing for this session, it opened up my mind into what's possible, and I think it's given me some more confidence to go out there and try some of the stuff. I also really appreciate you sharing the resource of what you put together because it's a great starting point. But again, thanks so much for joining us today. Everybody, thanks for sticking around until the end. Again, there's a couple links there and resources in the chat, but hope to see you at a future event. We're going to continue to invite folks like Todd to show us the underneath the hood of what they're working on so that we can get better and better with our own workflows and our own work, really day-to-day work, and be more efficient with what we do. But thanks so much, Todd, and thanks everybody else.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Vadim.
Todd.
Sergey, thanks.
Thanks,
Thanks, guys,
Todd.
for coming.
Take care.
We'll see
Thanks,
you.
everyone.
Yeah, see you.
Bye, folks.
Bye.